Welcome back to our conversation with Boston mayoral candidate Annissa Essaibi George. And Councilor, the mayor of Revere has written a scathing letter to Boston city officials complaining about their effort to turn a Revere hotel into a center where some of the homeless people currently living on the streets at Mass Ave and Melnia Cass Boulevard could access services and transition out of homelessness and addiction. He says outreach from city officials has been poor, advanced planning lacking. You've insisted that because the majority of people living at Mass and Cass are not from Boston, other communities, quote, need to step up and do their part, end quote. How will you make that happen as mayor when there's a clear pattern of resistance to decentralizing this population from other cities and even other neighborhoods of Boston?
Well, it's certainly important when we think about the crisis, the opioid crisis, when we think about the challenges of homelessness and those dealing with mental illness, especially as it plays out on the streets of Boston, and in particular at the Mass and Cass intersection in the neighborhoods of the South End and Lower Roxbury. I will also add, though, no neighborhood, no community in the city of Boston has been untouched by this crisis. And we think about the challenges of dealing with the outcomes and the symptoms of addiction, the challenges of the opioid crisis playing out on our streets every single day. We need to decentralize services, especially as they are at the Mass and Cass intersection. We also need a regional response to this effort. And, I've called in my capacity today as a city councilor and as mayor, I've committed to bringing together a regional effort. We need the partnership of other cities and towns, their leaders, their mayors, our partners in the state legislature to help with this. We need a regional response to the crisis. Crisis in particular.
So if, say, a property in West Roxbury became available for a similar kind of homeless transition center, would you put it there? And inevitably there'd be pushback. How would you deal with that?
So I'd actually say we already have transitional services in communities like West Roxbury. We have them in our city as a whole, in every neighborhood. There are programs in place around supporting women who are escaping domestic violence. When we think about the role of sober homes in our neighborhoods, when we think about the programs around individuals who are formerly incarcerated, re-entering in community, in every neighborhood in the city of Boston, we are playing a part in this important work. We need more help in response to this crisis. As you mentioned, 65%, almost exactly, of individuals who are coming to the city of Boston looking for help, looking for support services, looking for wellness, are not from the city of Boston. Boston will continue to do this work, but our continuum of care, our effort in this space is collapsing under the weight of this problem. We've got a tremendous amount of work to do. I've been committed to it since I joined the council in 2016, and I will remain committed as mayor of the city. But we cannot do this work alone here in Boston. We need a regional response. We need to take advantage of the supports that have been offered at the state level. We need to do more along that, working with the state legislature. We need other cities and towns to also step up and help with this crisis.
I want to squeeze in one more topic in our final minute and a half here. One of your central campaign claims is that as a former teacher, you can be the one to fix what's broken in the Boston public schools. But Marty Walsh, Tom Menino, others have made the same promise over the years. To the extent that they failed, why did they fail? And what will you do that they didn't?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a former classroom teacher here in Boston. I spent 13 years in the classroom at East Boston High, very proud of those years of service. I'm also a graduate of the Boston Public Schools and a parent of 4 BPS high schoolers. It is so important that when we think about the work of educating our kids, that we are putting our kids first and foremost in that work and supporting them and their families in our efforts. We have never had a teacher leading the city. And education is one of those most pivotal and central topics that we face as a city. And it is a place where we continue to fail too many of our kids and their families and our communities.
So give me one example. Give me one example of how, as a former teacher, you'd get into that 5th floor office and start doing something that your predecessors haven't that will help.
Well, first and foremost, we need to look seriously at grade reconfigurations. We need to look at high school realignment and redesign. We need to look at literacy curriculum for our babies. Kindergarten, first, second, third grade, we have not aligned our curriculum and offered the appropriate professional development for our teachers to engage in so that we are best preparing our kids for a long time of academic achievement and putting those supports in place. I've done so much of that work as a city councilor around full-time nurses, full-time social workers in all of our school buildings, but we need to do more around looking at our special education services, looking at our ELL programs, looking at all of the pieces that need to go into classrooms, into school buildings to support school communities. As a teacher, I've had firsthand experience in that work. I've led on it as a city councilor at large, and will lead on it and do that work in a very different way than any of my predecessors and any candidate who's ever run for mayor who has said, judge me on the schools. As a former classroom teacher who has given grades, who has done this work, I will be able to do this work for the Boston Public Schools.
Well, I'm afraid our time is up, but if voters and others would like to learn more about you and your campaign, where can they go to get that information?
Well, I can certainly check out our website, AnnissaForBoston.com, ANNISSAFOR Boston.com. Excited to have them take a look. All of the people of Boston get engaged in this election. Voter turnout was really low in September. We certainly hope to have more voices heard at the ballot box come November 2nd. And I hope to have your vote. I hope to have your support. And I hope to have your partnership in the very important work of leading our city for this very critical period of time in not our city's history, but in our city's future.